Welcome to CareerPod, your Audible career fair podcast. With your host, Dana Francis.
Economic downturns, recessions, and depressions. No economy is immune. So this episode, we are going to take a deep dive into the topic of mental health and well-being during a prolonged work search or unexpected job loss. Economists might go back and forth arguing the logistics of what a recession might be, but the reality is if you're unemployed and want to be working, it sucks. Looking for a job is often full-time, unpaid work. It can be mentally exhausting, drain your savings account, and cripple your self-esteem. This week, we welcome back Lyndsay Chaban, a registered provisional psychologist from Summit Counselling Services. If this sounds like a career path that you might be interested in, head back to episode 15 where we chat with Lyndsay all about her career. In this episode, we will be chatting about mental health resources on a budget, one's personal identity and how it's often tied to career, unexpected job loss, and coping strategies to get you back on your feet. We'll also be talking about how to weather rejection and mental fatigue during a job search, mental barriers people face when re-entering the workforce after a prolonged absence, stressors with being the primary income earner, and the importance of breaking down stigmas associated with getting help. Thanks for joining us for this unique episode. My hope is that this can help you, the listener, empathize with what it may look and feel like for someone that's been struggling with job loss and re-entering the workforce, whether that be you, a friend, or family member maybe. So let's jump right in. Thank you so much, Lyndsay Chaban, for rejoining us this week.
Thank you for having me.
I know an unexpected job loss can often completely disrupt one's routine. Can you speak to some of the ways this affects people both emotionally and on a physical level as well?
Job loss is a big struggle for a lot of people right now. And I would think that it probably affects both quite a bit. Emotionally, you'll likely feel some anxiety and some stress and, of course, the unknown of what I'm going to do next. Physically, the trickiest part about job loss and unemployment is the not having a purpose in a day. And it can be very, very easy to fall into there's no need to get out of bed routine, which can quickly lead to some depression and isolation and some negative stuff going down the line that way.
Do you find that people tend to have sleeping issues when they're unemployed?
Likely. Your brain is probably going a mile a minute all day long and all night long because there's unanswered questions for you in life. So you probably are up all night thinking about all of the things that aren't happening, that aren't moving for you. You'll also likely find that sleep gets disrupted, right? If we don't have a regular routine of going to bed at a certain time and getting up at a certain time, we tend to go to bed far later, especially if you're not getting any sleep. And then we often sleep all day because we're trying to make up for it, which doesn't help then with trying to get back to sleep at a decent hour at night. So you can tend to mess up the sleep cycles for you pretty quickly if you're not working.
What would you say some of the common stressors job hunters might be going through during periods of unemployment?
The competition, I think, is a huge piece, right? A lot of people are applying for the same job you're applying for, and that can make it feel a little bit daunting and in some situations, hopeless. If you've applied to a lot and you're not hearing back, you can start to feel like this part won't end for you.
One of the downsides to being unemployed is often people don't have benefits or additional financial resources to access help. Do you have any suggestions for someone where budget is maybe a barrier to seeking professional help?
Yes, there are a few out there. I know they're hard to find and they're a little bit tricky to get to, but they do exist. Alberta Health Services has mental health resources and they are covered through Alberta Health Care. The wait list is tough for that one, so you expect to be on a wait list for a while. Your other option is if you have a doctor who's part of a primary care network, they usually can refer you to short-term counseling, which is likely 6 to 8 sessions, but it'll be covered by healthcare as well. So if you go see your doctor and state that you're looking for counseling services, they'll refer you to somebody. Short-term counseling is better than nothing, I think. Even if you can go for 6 to 8 sessions, you're bound to get something helpful out of that versus not having any at all. Your other option, which is a great resource, is Momentum Walk-In Counseling, which is right on Calgary Trail, and they offer a pay-what-you-can rate. So usually it's only about 3 sessions, but you don't have to make an appointment. There's no wait list. You can literally just walk in and pay whatever you can, whether that's $2, $5, $10, $15. They're very open to just helping. So that's a good way to get in quickly if you're in crisis in that moment.
Would you recommend any other resources like books or going to the internet and finding motivational videos or meditation? Obviously, professional counseling is always going to be desirable over those options.
The struggle with if you're unemployed, I don't want you to spend more money on stuff that you can't afford in the moment or you're afraid you won't be able to afford. So meditation is huge. If you're into mindfulness, even a quick Google search can be great for that. YouTube will give you free mindful meditations, which can help lower stress. Another way to lower stress, which is a great resource, is exercise. Get out, walk, sit in nature, breathe, take a break from job hunting as much as you can every now and then to just reset and refresh. Everybody's a little bit different. So there are self-help books out there. There are resources, but it really depends on what clicks for you, right? So some people love mindful meditation and others roll their eyes at the idea of it, right? So if you're not somebody who connects with it, I don't encourage you to try it. You're probably not going to, and you'll feel like you're missing something or you're not doing something correctly. So find the thing that fits for you and go that route. So if you find that exercise is huge for you, do more of that. If you find that you're good with meditation, explore YouTube mindful meditation videos. If you think that affirmations and motivational videos sit right with you, then that's a great way to go too. I also recommend there is a TED Talk, Shawn, Achor, I think, on something about happiness. I don't know what the exact title is, but he's pretty easy to find if you put his name in for TED Talks. And he does a great description of what positive thinking can change as far as physically and mentally in you, and gives you some examples of how to get to a place where you're thinking more positively. So that would be a good resource too.
Say your best friend was to lose their job. What would be some of the coping strategies you would give to them to help keep them motivated and focused?
My first and foremost thing that I would encourage for her is to feel all those feelings. So one of the first things for job loss that a lot of people will say is, silver lining and it'll get better and, more or less suck it up. But they usually say it nicer than that. But it does suck. Job loss is awful and it's brutal to go through. And if we pretend like we're not feeling those feelings or we're not allowed to have those feelings, they're not going to go away. They'll stay with us until we acknowledge them and process them. So I think the first coping strategy would be to just feel those feelings. Feel bummed, feel stressed, feel sad, feel anxious about what am I going to do now? That's okay. Feel all of that. It does suck. And you need to acknowledge that before you can kind of move forward into the positive space. So once you kind of acknowledge, I'm in a tough spot and I need to be okay with working through that, then you can get to a place where you start working through it. But the first step is always to be okay with the fact that you're going to feel down, and you should. I mean, it is a stressful time and it's not something that anybody really just skips through. We have to be okay with the fact that we're going to feel pretty gross for a bit about it. So that's the first thing I would say. And then I would tell her that a really good coping strategy would be to have a plan. So whether that's I plan to apply to 2 jobs a day, or I plan to take a week to just be for a bit and then I'll get back into it. Any type of plan can help your brain go, I have a solution to this. I'm not lost. I'm not powerless. I'm not stuck. I'm moving forward.
Do you find people self-identify with their careers at all? Could this potentially be unhealthy for some people?
I think a lot of people do. If we're not defining ourselves by something, then we feel like we have no definition. So some people define as mom or as sister or brother or family member or friend, and others define as nurse or teacher or whatever your career is, especially if you've worked really hard to get there or if you put a lot of years in it, right? It becomes part of your identity to some degree. And if we lose that piece, that job, we almost feel like we lose part of our identity. Who are we if we're not being productive, if we're not in the world in some way? And do I think it's unhealthy? To some degree, yeah. Like if that's the only identity that you have, if it's gone, it is important that you find a new one or you'll feel lost. Absolutely. To some degree, it is a little bit healthy though, right? Because it defines who you are in one capacity of your life. I would suggest having more than just the one.
Say you're at a party and somebody asked you that question. So what do you do? What would be your response if you weren't working at the time?
I'm between jobs, probably, is my go-to. If you know what you want to be and you're just looking for work in that field, I don't see why you couldn't still say, I'm a teacher. You are. You're just not in that moment working.
I find that's the most common question whenever you go to a party or any sort of outings and people don't know you.
What do you do?
What's their go-to crutch? What do you do? I don't know. What do you do?
What do you do for work? That's okay. The fun thing for me is as soon as I tell them, you usually get this response where people stop talking to you. Yeah.
It's like, oh no,
Like,
she's
okay,
going to analyze everything I'm saying now.
And I promise you that we don't do that. So you're good. Feel free.
What do you think are some of the additional stresses that come with being the primary income earner within a household?
Well, I think there's a lot of weight on the primary income earner because job loss would be huge. What happens then, right? If you have dual incomes, you almost feel like there's this safety net. If I lose my job, I'm not desolate, that we have options, we're moving forward, we're at least having some income coming in. If you're the primary income earner, if you lose that job, then what, right? There's a lot of added anxiety around, I have to keep this because it's not just about me. I'm providing for my family. I'm the one bringing in the money for us to live comfortably or just get by or whatever state you're currently in. So I think there's a lot of added pressure to the fact that if it's on you and our economy is up and down, which it has been lately, you're likely often always thinking, what if?
I know job searching can often come with a lot of rejection, being interviewed, not getting a call back, sending out resumes and cover letters only to get no response. I think for me, the worst one was going door knocking and then having a lady at the front being like, no, go away. Yep. You can't apply this way. So
apply online.
Please apply online where we can reject you in another means. Mm-hmm. So it can all be very disheartening for some. Do you have any advice for those people that are just feeling, mentally fatigued and drained from all of it?
My advice is that burnout exists in that situation too. Especially if you're getting nowhere, you'll start to feel like you're working really, really hard and moving in no direction, which can be very, very frustrating. So my advice is to take breaks, just as you would for burnout, just as you would for work-life balance. If you're getting to a place where you're starting to feel like this is hopeless and I've tried 1,000 times, and take a break. It's okay if you aren't applying for jobs for that one day. It doesn't mean you're not moving forward. It doesn't mean that you're not making progress. It just means that you're taking a break for yourself, because it is daunting and it's not fun. And I've been there. Years ago when I was looking for jobs, I would email myself, because for a while I was like, maybe it's my email address that isn't working and that's why I'm not getting responses from people. So every couple of days I'd send an email to myself and sure enough, it's working. It's crickets coming from the other end. So I get it. It can feel hopeless and like it's never going to change, especially if you're applying for job after job after job and not quite getting anywhere. Take a break.
Sometimes you can just take a break and learn something new, and that might be information that you can use in the future. There's ways of taking breaks that are productive as well, which is nice.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to look in different directions, right? So if you're feeling like you've tried this way and you've applied to all of these jobs and nothing's coming through, it's okay to apply to different sets of jobs. It's also okay to call an interviewer and ask for constructive advice. If they chose not to take you on, it is okay to call them and say, can I get some helpful feedback for my next interview? Because it might be as simple as interview skills, or it could be as simple as cover letters or resumes. Everybody is particular in their own way at different businesses on what they're looking for. So sometimes it can be helpful just to hear, okay, this is an area I can work on.
One of our previous guests, Rachel Day, one of her favorite sayings was that you're not for everyone, and that's okay. And that just always sticks with me. It's always in the back of my head as my little mantra when I'm having a bad day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's huge, right? We tend to put everything on ourselves. So if you can get to a place where it's not about you. They didn't not hire you because of who you are as a person.
For those that choose to leave the workforce for a prolonged period of time, say like parents or those caring for an ill family member, what are some of the mental barriers that they might face when they're trying to re-enter the workforce?
I think a big piece there is a lack of confidence, right? How much has the world changed since the last time I was working? And am I able to adapt to it? Technology moves so quickly that if you stop using it for a while, you're going to feel like you can never catch up to it again. So that can be a big barrier is, am I at a place where I can do this? Do I still know this job? Am I still confident in what I do? Or will it be so different that I'll just feel lost and I don't have the skills anymore to do this? So I think that's a huge barrier for a lot of people, is knowing that if a long break occurs, am I still confident enough? Am I still competent in this role? Or am I going to struggle to learn new things? Or is it going to be totally different when I go back? There's also the newness of it, right? If you've been in a job for a long time, you know what to expect. You have your routine. When you're starting in a new job, everything kind of seems new. And especially if you've been out for a while, you almost feel like you're behind in some way, that all these workers who are already there have been in it, didn't take a break, while you might feel like you're 10 steps behind and you have to work a little bit harder to catch up to where they're at.
I know one of my friends, she said, and even though it had been a job she had had for a long period of time, she said after she returned after her mat leave, she felt like everybody was treating her differently because she was a mother now. And unfortunately, in her case, she had, every now and then her son would get sick and she'd have to take sick days. And she just felt like that respect had kind of dwindled a little. And so it always makes me sad to hear stories like that, because it's hard when you're a parent.
For both moms and dads, right? Especially dads who are the primary caregiver, they also deal with a lot of that too. So for any kind of employer to have to ask, okay, my kid's sick, I have to go, there tends to be some sort of, even if it's not verbal, there is some judgment there, I think, which is unfortunate. And I hope we get to a place where we're more understanding that work is not life.
I know in another case, I had one friend that her husband had taken a month off for parental leave so that he could help around the house because they had 2 little ones. And when he returned to work, his boss at one point said, oh, well, we're really behind now because so-and-so decided they wanted to go spend some time with their family. And I was blown away that someone could be that rude and inconsiderate. So unfortunately, there does still seem to be some of those stigmas with men that do choose to take parental leave, which I fully encourage. Like, it's a very important, vital part of that child's life. If you can afford to take the time off, do it.
Absolutely. I also think, it doesn't matter which way you go, you're going to have a critic, right? So if you return to work, there's the critics that say, oh, you should be staying home with your kids. If you stay home with your kids, there are the critics that say, okay, well, why aren't you working? So you're never going to make everybody happy. And unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with some criticisms that are verbal or nonverbal, just in how people treat us when we choose to go back, or if we choose not to go back.
Yeah, you can't make everybody happy, unfortunately.
No, you can't.
Might as well make yourself happy.
That's the key. It's easier said than done, but that is the key.
Do you think people struggle to seek out mental health services when they're unemployed?
I do think people struggle to seek out mental health resources for a variety of reasons, especially when they're unemployed. Finances are a huge barrier. It's unlikely to find somebody in private practice who will stick with you, who has early openings that you can see within a week that isn't going to cost you money. And if you don't have benefits through work, it's tough to try to budget that into what you're currently doing. I also think there's the stigma still. We have a really big stigma that I'm hoping will fade over time. I think it is a little bit, but it clearly is still there, especially for men, that there's something seriously wrong with you if you need to seek out mental health resources, which I don't think is the case at all. I think everybody can use it. I think that there's this piece of, if I have to reach out for help, then I'm not strong enough or I'm failing in some way. And that's not at all the case. It is always good to have more supports than less supports. And most of the time we're in it. We're too much in our own bodies, in our own thoughts, in our own selves to really see a picture outside of ourselves. And it can be huge to have that support that's objective and external and can help you kind of get out of whatever feeling you're stuck in. But yeah, I think there's still absolutely some struggles, and whether that's the stigma or whether that's finances or whether that's resources. A lot of people live in small areas and there aren't many resources for them available.
It's really unfortunate that a lot of those stigmas are still there. You'd like to think that they're slowly going away, but especially when people, when they are working, they usually have benefits, and it all depends on how much they have. But I think another important thing I like to tell my friends is that, if you have those benefits, use them when you have them, so that, because you never know what could potentially be coming along the line. Like, there could be a death in the family or a breakup or divorce. Like, there's a lot of things that could come up, and if you're already got some other things on the back burner that you don't realize are there, it could just kind of snowball effect into a little small problem becoming a very large one fast.
Absolutely. And then we feel like we don't have a handle on it. Yeah. I encourage everybody to seek mental health resources wherever they can in any situation, because it's always good to have somebody who's outside of your world to support you in things. But if you have benefits, if you have a job, absolutely use those benefits. You're paying for them anyway. You might as well.
Do you have any final tips for people from your own life experiences you'd like to share?
keep trying. It sucks. It's awful. You apply to 100 jobs and nobody calls you back. You go to 2 interviews out of those 100 jobs and they don't call you back. It's not fun, and it's very, very easy to start to feel hopeless. That's okay. That is absolutely a normal feeling. Keep trying. I'm pausing now because I want to add 211 as a resource.
What's 211?
You know, like 311 is city stuff and 811 is the health link number. So 211 is all mental health resources. You can call 211 and say, I'm unemployed, I'm overwhelmed, I'm needing supports. And they will give you a list of all the supports in the city. And that's not just like counseling supports. There's probably like open groups that you can attend who are with people that are also dealing with this. That's letting you know about inpatient or outpatient programs. That's helping you figure out adaptabilities or career counselors and that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty good resource to have.
Thank you so much for joining us again. Can you tell us where people can find you online?
You can find me on Facebook, Summit Counselling Services. You can also find me through my website, www.summitcounselingservicesedmonton.com. If you just Google Summit Counseling Services Edmonton, I usually pop up pretty quick on that first page. My email, my phone number is all on that website. Feel free to reach out if you need to. Thanks for having me.
If you head over to our show notes, I'm going to have a list of all the resources Lyndsay chats about in this episode. Depending on where you're listening from, dialing 211 might not be an option, so I've included the website, which has alternative numbers and also their email address at which you can contact them. If you know of any additional resources, feel free to head over to our Instagram or Twitter account @CareerPod. I'd love to keep this conversation going and learn about some of the resources in your local area. If you are currently unemployed, I highly recommend keeping a notebook on the go. Write down your goals, things you think you could improve on, and keep a list of the jobs that you've applied to. If you're feeling overwhelmed, let yourself take a breather. Go for a run, go for a walk, phone a friend, or treat yourself to something. I know for me, my go-to is banana Fanta slushies. I just need that little sugar kick to put a little perk in my step. If you've been enjoying the show, feel free to leave a review, and you can also hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode.
This episode was written, produced, and hosted by Dana Francis. Editing, mixing, and additional voices by James Seabrook at Two Bodies of Water Productions.
Thank you so much for joining us. Till we meet again, stay passionately curious.